Welcome to Speaking Concretely, the official podcast of the Cement Association of Canada. I'm your host, Adam Auer, President and CEO of the CAC. Today we're joined by Jude Tremblay, President of the Canadian Concrete Pipe and Precast Association. I'm really excited for this episode because we're going to explore the hidden world of underground concrete infrastructure, like underground water pipes and storm and wastewater management systems that are out of sight and often out of mind, but absolutely essential to our daily lives. Jude, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
So you're with the Canadian Concrete Pipe and Precast Association. Let's start with a little education for our listeners, because I think when most people think of concrete, they usually think of, the traditional ready-mix concrete, the type that's moved around in those spinning mixer trucks and kind of poured into place as a sort of thick liquid type product before it cures. What is precast concrete and what are the main uses?
So you can think of precast concrete in terms of the final product itself, whether it be precast concrete or concrete pipe being produced in a manufacturing facility. So instead of having the ready-mix truck drive to the job site, the forming contractor put the forms together and then pour the concrete into the forms, this is all done in a controlled environment at a manufacturing facility, which contains its own concrete batch plant, material handling systems. They obviously have forms as well. And these forms can either be, standard products. Concrete pipe is one product that's very standard. Precast concrete itself, you have standard products, but you also have some custom products. And this really, there's some inherent advantages to that. There is a substantially higher 28-day strength that these products, whether they be concrete pipe or precast structural elements, that they attained at 28 days. It's typically between 60 to 70 MPa. And the reason for this has more to do with manufacturing requirements, where you need to obviously have a certain production capacity. And to attain that production capacity, you have to be able to move these products around the following day, and you need to have that strength gain. And at the end of the day, the strength keeps gaining, and you end up with a higher 28-day strength, which also provides a higher durability. The other aspects of it is because you're able to produce these products at any time, they're ready to be shipped to the job site when the contractor needs them. So it really helps eliminate some delays and some steps that are happening on the job site, and you can essentially prefabricate the precast concrete months ahead. So it also really limits or almost eliminates the impact of inclement weather, because these elements, concrete pipe, can be installed anytime during the year. So there's a lot of advantages to the precast. So that really speaks to what precast or concrete pipe is. And as far as main uses, wherever you can think of concrete being utilized in infrastructure, it can be utilized from a precast manufacturing facility. Can really replicate that same product.
A just-in-time delivery kind of system.
Exactly.
We talk about the fact that concrete is everywhere, and actually one of the sort of little things that I often do when I'm doing advocacy or education on behalf of the CAC in my role is I just tell people to look out the window. If I'm giving a speech or whatever, look out the window and you'll see how important concrete is. It's everywhere: buildings, roads, public transit, you name it. It's usually we're standing on concrete wherever we happen to be during those events. But so much concrete is actually underground infrastructure that no one ever really sees. What role does concrete play in what makes up the underground of our cities?
Absolutely essential role for our underground infrastructure. Typically when you hear concrete pipe, you think of handling stormwater, wastewater, but it also expands to having pedestrian walkways that are underground with the transit systems, conduits for utilities, whether it be hydro, fiber optics. You get the larger segmental tunnel liners as well, where you've got, subways or rapid transit vehicles operating there. Box culverts, large pipe sections, and open bottom culverts are used as small bridges for not only vehicular traffic, but train traffic. And there are also structures that are commonly used at airports that meet the loading requirements for aircraft. So there's a lot of stuff below grade that people like you mentioned, Adam, that don't realize what's there, but it's critical for everything to work right, and to have a high durability and resilient infrastructure. You need to make sure that what is underground is good and will last a long time.
So yeah, I think that question kind of hints at the answer to the next question I want to ask you, which is about concrete pipes specifically. And, I think about concrete pipes, I think maybe they carry water, maybe there are durability and other advantages that you mentioned sort of the introduction. Tell us a little bit about pipes specifically and their role and advantages in underground infrastructure.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's good. That's a good question. I mean, as far as how long they last, well, I mean, concrete pipe's been around thousands of years. It has a very long and proven service life. Um, the standard that's typically stated is that concrete elements will last, whether it's pipe or precast, 100 years. While we know in Canada, many of the older cities in Canada have a large number of active concrete pipes and precast structures that are still in service, and they're doing the job that they were designed to do, and they have surpassed the 100-year mark. So this really highlights durability and sustainability aspect of concrete, and reinforces the reason for selecting concrete as the material of choice for infrastructure. And primarily, concrete pipe carries storm and wastewater, but as mentioned earlier, there's you can design it to convey or to carry different utilities or other purposes that you need. So it's got some flexibility as well.
So there's a little debate inside the CAC, I'm told, about whether water running through concrete pipes is running through the pipe directly as in contact with the concrete, or is the concrete used as more of a protective shell over other materials?
Both are actually correct, but typically, I would say the majority, you have concrete pipe conveying both storm and wastewater with direct contact. However, depending on the design that's chosen, uh, potentially you might have an aggressive environment, and a liner can be added, and the concrete pipe can be produced with a protective liner that would ensure that you do attain the service life that you require, especially when there's harsh environments. And this also, not only concrete pipe, but box culverts and box manhole structures also have the option of having these liners incorporated in the production of these structural elements. So you're both right.
So, Jude, I want to bring this conversation sort of into the realm of, what's hot and topical in terms of this strange environment that we find ourselves in with, tariffs south of the border and economic challenges here at home, and in particular, the housing crisis. Everyone I think knows and is seized with this challenge that we're facing with a huge housing shortage. Federal government says we need about 3.5 million additional housing units by 2030 just to restore affordability. So this obviously is going to have huge implications for some of the underground infrastructure that we've talked about. Tell me a little bit about where you see your industry playing in that particular challenge.
I agree, Adam. This is definitely one of Canada's big challenges at the moment. We're not moving fast enough. It seems like we're stagnant, but there are some developments, and there is one or multiple precast foundation systems that actually exist to provide complete fabrication of the foundation of a residential dwelling from a manufacturing facility, which includes not only the wall but the footing, and includes an incorporated window. When you talk about precast concrete, you talk about accelerated construction. So this provides accelerated construction, no impact with inclement weather, and you've got a high strength structure that's underground. The labor on site's reduced, no formwork required. So it's a good step forward for moving towards modular homes. I mean, the biggest challenge, I think, and the above grade, which our association doesn't represent, but I know there's a lot of good solutions out there. The challenge with the above grade I see is just the customization that the owner wants to see in terms of what historically has been there. Oh, I want more windows or less windows, and that becomes a challenge for making things modular. But I think there's enough technology that we can probably get beyond that. I mean, the advantage of the underground foundation is that nobody will ever comment on, I want this in the foundation. They're readily accepting square or rectangle or whatever shape foundations, and modifications are rarely required. So we've actually have one of our producer members that is actively producing these prefabricated foundations, and is doing quite well. So I expect that to continue, and hopefully it'll migrate to above ground as well.
That's super interesting. Actually, I had never really considered, given the attention that's been paid to modular construction as one of the solutions that we should be looking at to rapidly accelerate the development of new homes. I hadn't really thought about the underground portion of it. It's very interesting to see that that actually can also be modularized as well.
Hmm.
So that's for like new developments. But another solution, obviously, that people are looking at in terms of housing is infill development. That's going to rely on existing infrastructure. If we are going to significantly increase the density through infill development in our cities, for example, can the current underground infrastructure handle that increased load? Or, what are the sort of the solutions to that? The sort of retroactive increase in demand on infrastructure that might have been built decades ago.
No, I mean, it's a good solution. It's kind of one of those low hanging fruit solutions that municipalities and provincial governments are pushing for. On the other side of that is, what is the impact on the ability of the existing infrastructure to handle that increased demand? So, one of the areas that we've been quite involved in as an association, as an industry, is the trenchless technologies that are out there. This technology has come a long way in the last 25 years. I'm going to talk a little bit about micro tunneling. I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but essentially, instead of creating an open cut where you actually open up a trench and install new concrete pipe.
Which is super disruptive to traffic and, day-to-day business, yeah.
Oh yeah. So as soon as you need space. You need space to put the material. You're going to create dust. You're going to limit road capacity. It's going to go on forever. It's going to create noise. All the great stuff, and everybody gets. It's a tough challenge. But when you get into the micro tunneling, you essentially need an entry shaft and an exit shaft, and then everywhere in between is all the work's done underground. The reason for the entry shaft is you have what they call a tunnel boring machine that gets lowered into the below grade and then pushed into the below grade area that it needs to go, followed by the pipe segments, and then it ends up going from the entry shaft to the egg, or from the launch shaft to the exit shaft. And once it gets to the exit shaft, it's then retrieved and pulled out, and the pipeline is installed. And this technology has been used in all the major municipalities in Canada numerous times. So it's a great technology, especially when you have an area that's built up. You do need to have a very accurate survey of what's underground. You don't want to hit anything or get any surprises or compromise anybody's foundation. But it's laser guided, very accurate, and there's been quite a few successful projects. And concrete pipe is just it's just a piece of that. And I think it's a good solution, because you have to be able to address that when you densify, and this is a good solution for built up areas for sure.
So that's a solution to increasing capacity as we try and increase density in our urban centers in particular. What about maintaining existing infrastructure? So, another challenge that we often hear from, especially from municipalities, is that they have massive infrastructure deficits. Their maintenance of existing infrastructure hasn't kept up with the need. Huge costs associated with that renewal or maintenance. Where does the pipe and precast sort of pipe industry fit in that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, that's an issue for a lot of municipalities. There's only so much money to go around. Municipalities get their money from taxpayers, and taxpayers are the ones that don't want to pay any more tax. So they're kind of caught. Ensuring that the choices that you make, the material choices that you make for a given municipality in terms of infrastructure, I think will determine how long of a service life you will have. And it's critical to choose infrastructure that has a longer service life. I mean, once you make that selection, it's very hard to recover from something that fails early, and to correct that. It takes a long time to occur, and it takes a long time to fix. So I would just say be very cautious, and with respect to specifications and what you allow to be used as underground infrastructure, be very vigilant in term being a municipality, I think, because there are long-term consequences that are very hard to recover from and take a long time.
I think you answered this question. And it's kind of an unfair question anyway, because I'm kind of putting you in the position of a politician about, how do you address those funding gaps in deferred maintenance? But I think you sort of answered it already by saying, you plan ahead for longevity.
Yeah.
And, we often talk about the difference between cost and value, and how value ultimately, a value based decision making, especially when it comes to infrastructure, usually leads to lower costs in the long term, even if there are short term higher costs associated with building with quality.
Yeah, I agree, Adam. I mean, the other aspect is, and I know Ontario requires this. The province of Ontario requires this as an example. I think other provinces probably do, but the proper implementation of an asset management plan is really a good start, because then you can really compare, um, you know, the infrastructure. If you've selected different materials, how they're coping, how their life cycle is, what's the repair schedule look like, how much maintenance, and then you can really put a value to it. Again, it's unfortunate, but that takes time to accumulate that data. So if you do end up with infrastructure that has a 30-year service life instead of 100, that's a very, very costly impact for municipalities. So again, it's a lot of caution there, and you've really got to be careful when you allow, what materials you do allow to be used in the infrastructure.
I'm going to bring it back again to a sort of hot topic of the moment, which is the sort of elbows up. Everyone's talking about elbows up in Canada. Hopefully, by the time this podcast is actually published, we'll still be talking about elbows up. But your association is currently promoting a buy local, buy Canadian kind of approach, and certainly that's very aligned with what we're doing at the Cement Association, and what some of our other allies are doing, not only in concrete actually, but in other building materials. But tell me a little bit more about how this initiative is important to the Concrete Pipe and Precast Association in particular.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, this is something that we've always mentioned in our seminars or plant tours or our lunch and learns, just to let consultants and municipalities know we are very local as an industry. I think, given the current, I guess, what's happened currently, I think it's even more important. And to really express this, how our industry is extremely local. We operate in local communities, and the products that are produced, manufactured, designed at these manufacturing facilities are used for local infrastructure. Given the weight of concrete, which is, it's substantial, but it also provides much of its strength and durability because of the weight, you can only ship so far. So that really highlights the fact that it's local. And the local really means the employees that are working, whether it be in the engineering department, department, QC, on the plant floor, the truck drivers that are delivering the product, the subcontractors that are hired by the manufacturing facility to help out, summer students that are coming from post-secondary, et cetera, are all local. The raw materials that are used in the manufacturing of concrete pipe or precast is also local, whether it be cement, aggregates, admix, reinforcement, all comes from local sources. This speaks to, I know during COVID, there was some supply chain issues, but not so much on the concrete pipe and precast side, because again, everything is very local. So we're not dependent on something coming from outside to, a critical element part of the production process. So we didn't run into the same issues that other materials would have run into during COVID, and we saw the result of that. You've got when a manufacturing facility, a concrete pipe or precast manufacturing facility supplies a local infrastructure project, the money that's spent by that municipality stays within the community. It gets it gets used to pay the employees, to pay for the local raw materials, and to keep the business going and potentially expanding. And we have membership from Vancouver Island all the way to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and everything is very local. And we're proud that we are, and we represent communities throughout Canada, which is great. So we just want to make sure that everyone understands where those products are produced and by who they're produced. And yeah, that's our message.
I have two more questions for you, but I think I'm going to combine them into one because they're sort of related. And
Okay.
we seem to be developing a bit of a pattern on the podcast of always ending the podcast with a bit of a, crystal balling. Like, where do you see, how do you see the industry evolving into the future?
Right.
But I'm hoping in your answer you can address another question I have around climate change. And it's been a topic we've talked about a lot on the podcast, largely from a mitigation point of view, like how to reduce GHGs associated with the use of cement and concrete products. But the pipe and precast industry, I think, has a particularly strong narrative around the adaptation side. The climate is clearly changing. Wildfires, extreme weather events, especially heavy rainfall, which we've seen a lot of this summer and the past previous summer. So, in terms of kind of how you see the industry evolving, how do you see some of those changing demands playing into the industry and into the future?
Yeah. So there's a few pieces to this. I'll speak to it's been a really, still going as we speak, right? The wildfires throughout Canada, and it's not great. Doesn't seem to be slowing down. Um, so again, this speaks to, infrastructure and the choices you make, and how do you ensure that the infrastructure that you install today will be there tomorrow, given, the wildfires, the rain events we're getting, et cetera. So we know that concrete pipe and precast doesn't burn and doesn't float. So there's some choices that you have to make to say, well, we want to make sure that this is, these roads are critical to our infrastructure, and we don't want, we don't want the conduit to be on fire and then gone. If there's a forest fire, and then we can't have access to address the forest fire or to have an evacuation. So it's some really, really critical decisions that have to be made. And, we believe that, whether it be concrete pipe or precast, really provides that resilience that provincial governments, federal governments, municipalities need when, we've got that uncertainty of what's going to happen next year. And, you do need those conduits to be in place, especially if you have a forest fire and then all of a sudden you have a significant rain event. And, we've seen this in, an example is California. They lost a lot of their, they had a material that they selected that was flammable. And, when they got the heavy rains, and all of a sudden it became landslides because of, after the forest fires. So there's some choices that have to be made. And I think investing long term and knowing that the challenges are there is an important decision that everybody has to consider. So we're seeing that as a role we can play. The future, we're seeing, there's been a shift, and this has been going on for probably 15 to 20 years, with a bit of an acceleration in the last little bit. When you say precast concrete, that really speaks to an accelerated construction. And if you have an infrastructure project and you're able to accelerate the construction, that means you reduce construction time significantly, because there's a whole bunch of steps, like I spoke to before, that are done in a manufacturing facility, and the structures themselves, the structural elements are ready to be shipped and installed very, very quickly on the job site. So if you shrink that schedule, then you're reducing the amount of congestion that happens because of this infrastructure project. So the impact on greenhouse gases is very, very significant by shrinking the schedule, and also the cost savings. And it's been more about the cost savings, because this shift where we've seen typically structures that would be cast in place on a job site now be done by the precast industry, where the contractor or municipality or consultants have been asking, can we do this in your facility? And then it'll be ready to go. And I don't have to worry about a critical path affecting my schedule. And I can save a few weeks, a few months on the construction of this project. And that has been really expanding in the last few years. And when you look at what's, historically what's happening in Europe, I mean, the precast is much more abundant than as a percentage of concrete that's being utilized than we see in Canada. But that's our trend. And I think essentially it was driven by cost savings of shortening the schedule. But the impact, in addition to cost savings, is reduction of greenhouse gases when you see the reduction of a construction schedule. And then you're also gaining the long service life because of the properties of concrete that give you that 100-year plus service life. So that's where I see this going. And the trend is significant. And there are a number of our members that are expanding significantly because of this demand. So it's good to see. And money drives a lot of things, but in this case, it does drive this, but it also, the end result is also reduces the greenhouse gases from shortening the schedules.
A win-win-win, as they say.
Yeah.
Jude Tremblay, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you to our audience for listening. And don't forget to subscribe and follow our podcast on your favorite platform. We hope to see you next time.